Curiosity's not a sin, Harry, but you should exercise caution.
There's a time strand. You're fraternizing with the enemy.
There's the Cruciatus curse.
And we'll celebrate a boy who was kind and honest and brave and true, right to the very end.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We're doing chapter 14, The Unforgivable Curses, for foreboding chapter title. And we have Anna back with us.
Oh, hello. Not foreboding, I promise.
This is, it's an interesting chapter. I think it caught both of our attention probably the first time we read it, and probably the 30-odd times that we've read it.
Oh my god, yeah, but no matter how many times I read it, I forget how much it makes me cry.
Yeah. It's, what, are you saying there's some trauma with the unforgivable curses?
Oh, just a bit. Maybe just a tad.
It's no
big deal.
Obviously, a lot of this chapter takes place in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. A couple other things that happen. We get our introduction to SPEW.
Yes! SPEW.
Society for the Promotion of Elvish Welfare.
Woo! They have a manifesto. I love that she uses that word.
Manifesto?
Yes.
Yes, and she bullies, peer pressures. Oh,
absolutely. There was no saying no for
Harry and Ron into paying for the actual badges.
2 sickles.
And such. We get some Hedwig mention because she returns with a letter from Sirius.
She's not given nearly enough attention.
She is not. Really, she really isn't. That was a very long journey. So there's a couple of different things going on in this chapter. I think where we need to start is the Defense Against the Dark Arts side of this. And to start there, we do get a Lupin mention in that Mad-Eye opens his class up with how Lupin left a note for him about...
Because Lupin was a good teacher!
Lupin's a great teacher. And I like how Moody is just like, seems like he got that covered. Seems like you did the dark creature thing and you're all set on that. Which, I don't know if he knows a lot about Remus Lupin or whatever, but he seems to just trust that Lupin is like, yeah, Lupin covered it. We're good. You know what I mean?
Like you'd have to if you're taking over from a teacher.
I guess. I don't know. It's just like, wow, he's just going like, all right, you know that. Moving on. Like, all right, don't have to do that again. He got it. All right. It also made me just question, like, Lupin must have left this note for, like, every year level.
Of course, because he was a good teacher.
Which then made me think, like, I wonder what Lupin's 5th, 6th, and 7th year classes must have been like. That must have been, like, the coolest things ever, right?
Oh, my God, yeah.
Like, when you get to advanced...
I think that they would be kind of similar to...
Like, Dark Creatures? Or,
No.
Like...
I think kind of similar to, like, what Moody's doing. Like, maybe not, like, you know...
Unforgivable curses?
Spiders. Well, no, I think he would have to teach the unforgivable curses. Maybe not in the exact same manner, but I would think that there would still be a lot of... He was a very hands-on professor, Lupin was. So I would imagine it would be not totally far off from what Moody does. But he would have kept it to the 6th and 7th years. Like what Moody is doing with 4th years, Lupin would have done with 6th and 7th years.
Well, Moody does mention, like, unforgivable curses aren't supposed to be taught until at least 6th year.
Right.
Which is a fascinating thought to even venture in itself. But I just got down a rabbit hole of, like, I would love to just sit in on a Lupin 6th or 7th year class and just...
I would sit on any Lupin lesson that you would let me.
I'm imagining, like, Lupin doing, like, a really advanced, like, Defense Against the Dark Arts curses and stuff like that, 6th and 7th. And then I'm just imagining, like, his 1st year level class is just like, hey guys, so magic. Here's what magic is. You know, like
what do you teach in a 1st year Defense Against the Dark Arts class? Like,
that's what I'm getting in my head.
I know.
Especially Lupin and his personality, I'd just be like, okay, kids, so magic with a wand.
You're acting like they're like kindergartners.
That's what I'm picturing. That's what I'm picturing in my head. Is exactly that, like a picture book.
So
Like he just like flips through a picture book.
I would happily sit in on that class.
They all sit in a semicircle around him as he's like.
He's got one of those carpets.
It's like a picture book, but it also like pops out. It's like a 3D. I don't know. This is where my head goes. I digress. So we get to Moody actually teaching, and he wants to teach about curses, which I think is a really cool idea, despite the curses that he's getting into, not really supposed to be taught until 6th year. And we get into the unforgivable curses. So obviously you have the Imperious Curse, which is total control. Gave Ministry Magic trouble after the First Wizarding War with Voldy. Like, who was Imperious, who was free will, a lot of problems. You have the Cruciatus Curse, which is straight up torture. And then you have the Killing Curse, which kills. So it's very aptly named. It just is what it is. All of which will earn you a one-way ticket to a life sentence in Azkaban. So, what are your kind of thoughts on just Moody opening up with unforgivable curses?
It does seem kind of intense to begin there. I mean, I feel like there are curses that he could have started with that they probably do. I feel like they're not going to spend the entire year on the 3 unforgivable curses.
You feel like that's the main event portion?
Yeah, like I feel like maybe get a feel for your students before you just jump right in there. But I mean, it's definitely a way to make them respect you and really like you.
I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler thought, but do you think the people who he has in his class specifically give him that little nudge to be like, no, let's do this?
So I have a lot of things I want to say about that, but they're all very spoilery.
Fair enough.
What I will...
Side note, speaking of kids in his class, I like him going down the roll call and then like him with his magical eye, like looking at everybody. And then he's like writing something on the board or something like that. And he's like, put that away, Miss Brown, or something like that.
It is lavender.
And he's looking like through the back of his head.
Yep.
And Harry's just like almost taking note. Like I imagine Harry taking note in a notebook. It's like, magical eye, check. Magical eye can apparently see through back of head. Check.
There's another one that
magical eye can see through wooden desk.
Yes.
Check. Like, and he's just like listing all of these off in his head. It's great.
It's very hairy.
It's helpful for us, the reader. But I just imagine him like in his notebook as he's taking notes. Can do this. Can do this.
It's like in the Sorcerer's Stone movie when Snape is giving his big speech and they show adorable little 11-year-old Daniel Radcliffe like taking his notes of stop or death. It's like, what kind of notes are
in
these?
like really specific penmanship.
Yeah.
With like the period or like with the exclamation point.
I think through the back of his head would have gotten an exclamation point.
Can see through wood. Check. Yes. He's like, okay, who knows what a curse might be that would get you a lifetime sentence in Azkaban? And as kids raise their hand, Ron is the first one with the Imperious Curse. Then he pulls out his spider from a jar.
Poor Ron.
And yeah, Ron struggles. And he does the Imperious Curse, the Imperio, on this spider, and then makes it do effectively a tap dance, a couple other things, and a tap dance. And kids start laughing in the classroom, because it is an absurd scene to watch a spider tap dance. And then he cuts across them with like this, think that's funny. What if I did this to you? And you had no idea what you were doing or what I could make you do. And like, I think Harry notes silence immediately.
Mm-hmm. So Moody is a really great teacher. Like, is he maybe a tad too intense, showing this all to 4th years? Yes. Is it semi-questionable that he's performing these unforgivable curses, like he's actually performing them? Yeah, that's a little suspect. But is he teaching important lessons to these kids? Like, with one sentence, he got these kids to realize the extreme seriousness of the Imperious Curse.
Which is not Easy to do in a room full of
Right.
kids. Yeah, for sure.
Like, I was going to ask you later, like, which of the 3 unforgivable curses do you think is the worst?
Oh, gosh.
And we can talk about it more in depth. But I think about it a lot. And a lot of times I end up coming back to the Imperious Curse. I feel like people always kind of think that's, like, the least bad of the 3. And to me, like, the whole idea of it, like, the things, you literally have no control over what could happen to you, what you could do to others, like, that is just, I can't imagine it.
My gut reaction to that question is Imperious Curse.
Really?
Would be my
Okay.
worst, because I think as a human being, you get so used to the idea that you don't even really acknowledge that it's a thing anymore, and you don't think of it ever. But the idea of free will
Mm-hmm.
is everything
Yeah.
to who a human being is. Your right to make a choice. Your right to say whatever you want. And we're speaking as Americans too, and a lot of these rights are in our Constitution, and
Right.
and we recognize that a lot of places around the world, free will is an illusion as much
Yeah.
as it is.
Absolutely.
Where you don't have the freedom to say things, and you don't have the freedom to make choices.
Don't have the
But-
freedom to dress how you want to dress.
Exactly. So, there is that caveat to it. But for our purposes, you have that choice and that freedom to engage someone, to run away from someone, to do a lot of different things. So to take that away is a very scary thought. And I think for anyone who has had free will taken from them, it's the worst to not be in control of your body, your mind, anything. It's scary.
Terrifying.
So I think that one, not to say that obviously we can get into the spoilers section and the broad overview of how these spells impact the wizarding world.
Right.
But Cruciatus Curse obviously comes with its own. I mean, if torture isn't enough to make you like scared, then there's something probably wrong with you.
Probably.
And obviously, Killing Curse is the most bluntly obvious. Life just gets taken from you. So,
Well, there's no even way to like block it or do, yeah.
so that presents its own scary things. And when we get to the spoiler section, we can kind of get into those 3 in the broader wizarding world. But yeah, my gut reaction is Imperious Curse. So I don't know if that surprised you or not.
It does surprise me.
Hey.
I mean, it makes me feel kind of good though, because I literally thought I was one of the only people who thought it was the worst.
It's nice to know after knowing you for so long, I can still throw a surprise in your direction. And so long speaking, like talking Harry Potter. It's interesting. But yeah, so Ron says the Imperious Curse, and Moody has that moment where he shuts the class up immediately. Then you have Neville raise his hand, and I think Harry was the one to note that he was mildly surprised that Neville even raised his hand.
He said that normally herbology is the only subject he willingly volunteers information in.
Yep. And he volunteered the Cruciatus Curse, which stunning if you know our opening, and you'll get some of that. But Moody then takes Spider out, and to Ron's dismay, enlarges it. So
It's not really necessary.
So you can see the spider twitching and contracting in odd, unfortunate ways. And then Hermione offers the Avada Kedavra, the Killing Curse, which takes another spider out, kills it with a blinding green light. And then he has that dramatic line of like the no blocking and anything like that. And he's like, only one person is known to have survived this, and he's sitting right in front of me.
Why would you do
Stairs.
that to a yeah, seriously, why would
Like-
you do that to a teenage boy? That's terrible. But anyway.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the students aren't thick enough to not put 2 and 2 together there, but yeah, that's just like literally spotlight right on the situation.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that after that build up and all of coming from Moody, I don't know what students then think of, because that creates a certain type of image of Harry. Like, I wonder what students outside of our trio, if we can go outside of that little bubble that we get, that narration bubble, and go to, like, Dean or Seamus or one of the other students and just be like, what are they thinking of Harry at that moment?
I would like to know. I'll go a step further. Say, presumably, Moody gives the same lesson to all of his fourth years.
Sure. Yeah.
Is he in Ravenclaw saying, oh, and there's only one person to know to survive the killing curse. You go to school with him. Ravenclaws are certainly going to figure it out without even Harry to be sitting there, Moody staring at him. So then, like, what do people who don't even know Harry as well as his fellow Gryffindors thinking? Like, it's just, yeah.
You know what just popped into my head? After I go on that long-winded monologue of, I wonder what Lupin would teach 7th years or 1st years. What is Moody teaching his 7th years right now? Like, what on earth is he teaching them?
Putting the Cruciatus curse on them.
Like, is he just killing them? Like, randomly? Do we know that?
Okay, I'm pretty sure he's not killing them.
Like, what could he possibly...
Pretty sure even Dumbledore would have a problem with that.
Like, but seriously though, if he's teaching 4th years Unforgivable Curses, where's the up from there? Like, you know what I mean?
He's teaching them how to perform them?
Is he bringing in, like, a real werewolf to just attack 6th years and just be like, figure this out? Like,
I think he's setting up the spiders and he's having them perform a Vada Kedavra on the spiders.
Maybe he's taking them into field trips in the Forbidden Forest and just be like, you're on your own. Come back, maybe. Like,
just drop him in the middle of like a game of Survivor.
Like their
you're
own
either coming back or you're not.
Like, maybe this was the first Hunger Games. It's him just setting this up in the Forbidden Forest and just being like, whoever comes back alive gets the A.
Constant vigilance!
I was wondering when the first constant vigilance was going to be brought up, and there it was.
It's been in my mind a few times.
Just randomly screaming it out.
Yes.
Seriously, though, I have no idea what he probably teaches other classmates.
Yeah, I don't know.
I want to see it.
Unless this is just his, like, welcome to Mad Eye Moody, and he gave this exact same lesson to every single... He even gave it to, like, the first years.
Probably.
There's no pretty picture books and rugs like Remus would have provided. It's just constant vigilance.
Those poor...
Welcome to the wizarding world, Muggle-born children. Here's some curses for you.
Those poor 11-year-old children.
Yep.
I could just, like... I just imagine, like, little Johnny going to his seat, and then out of nowhere, like, from behind, constant vigilance! And, like...
What do you think happens to Dennis Creevy?
He probably jumps, like, 3 feet off of his seat. Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, that was a fun side. I don't know if you have any notes on Spew at the moment, or if you want to save that for later chapters.
Just Manifesto.
Just Manifesto. So we get Hedwig returning with Sirius's note. And, quote-unquote, rumors have reached Sirius.
Yeah.
And this is... Harry's scar hurting is just one in a series of things that he has heard about that has concerned him enough that he's making his way back to the UK.
Yes.
Okay. I have questions on all of that. But also, here's a pure Harry being an idiot moment. That literally he reads the words, this is one of a series of events that I've heard about. And he immediately thinks, it's me, I'm the only thing.
Well, he is the final straw that makes Sirius decide to come back. Come on, he's 14 years old. I sympathize with him here. I probably would have had the exact same reaction as Harry.
No, I would have been curious about, like, what other series of events?
Well, and Ron even says, like, what sort of rumors are reaching him? Like, how? Why?
Yes.
Like, what context does he have as he's laying on the beach with his giant toucan coming in?
Exactly my questions about this whole thing. Like, who is he talking to? Like, I don't know. Is he in conversation with Dumbledore?
It's Lupin.
I would assume Lupin.
Yeah.
I would assume that they've been
They
corresponding
need to
back and
build
forth.
their relationship back up.
Is he in conversation with Dumbledore? Because Dumbledore is one of the only few people that know that Sirius is innocent and a free agent.
Right.
So I would assume...
I feel like those are literally
the only two people.
Options. Yeah.
I don't know how much Dumbledore has put, unless it's a very, like, encrypted, like, note that he's sending Sirius. I can't imagine he's telling him anything too crazy.
I could definitely imagine Wolfstar having their own language that nobody else knows. Well, anybody still living still knows.
Fair enough. I could imagine Lupin just corresponding fairly normally, all things considered. But I don't know what...
We know Snivelus isn't giving him any info.
But then that would beg the question of, Dumbledore's got his ear to the ground on everything.
Yes.
What's Lupin doing at this point in time that he's able to relay rumors that might concern Sirius? I don't know.
I don't know. It's harder for him to find a job. Maybe
Exactly.
he's doing some shady stuff.
Maybe.
That gets him some info.
But, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting letter from Sirius. And
I feel like it's mostly just us reading into it, and it's a plot device to get him back in the UK.
probably. But then why do you even put, like, a series? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, there was...
Wait. I wanted to bring this up.
Uh-oh.
Ron is wondering what signs Bertha Jorkins. That's all I have to say.
Oh. I did not prepare a Bertha Jorkins segment today, and I'm regretting that now, but...
It's okay.
Yes, okay. I will give you that is definitely one of the things that Sirius is hearing about.
See? Bertha is important.
I am giving you that's one of the things he's hearing about. It's just interesting, like, from where is he hearing that? Or is he just getting daily prophets delivered to him, and he's reading Rita Skeeter articles?
He's probably not getting them delivered to him, but I'm sure it's easy enough for him to steal some. Though mate would know.
Or maybe that's what Lupin's writing to him about, is what's in the Daily Prophet. Maybe that's what it is. Because that would be innocuous enough. Anyway, I did want to wrap up the non-spoiler with... it was just a very interesting way to end the chapter with... Usually we're clued into everything because Harry's noticing it or witnessing it himself. And in this end of the chapter, we get clued into something Harry specifically missed, which we don't get that often. And it was just a weird, different take on the writing, I guess.
She's giving us a lot more Neville, like, this early on than I remembered her giving us.
Essentially, the chapter ends by pointing out that if Harry paid more attention, he'd notice that he's not the only one staying awake tonight because Neville's not snoring. And it's just like, yes, it's an interesting fact that Neville's still awake.
But it's like something that just pokes at you enough. Like, there's a reason why Neville has so much love. And I feel like it's those little pokes that she included a lot more of than I realized. Like, it's not just Matthew Lewis having his glow up. It is literally like J.K. Rowling just put in all these little pokes that
Neville's one of her, like, core 6 characters that she talks about. That's like,
I just want to, like, engulf him and hug.
Neville needs a hug in this chapter.
Yeah.
The class with Moody shook him a little bit.
I liked there was a line before this one when Ron and Harry, I felt like, had a very good, like, boy check-in with Neville. And Harry appreciated Moody because Moody having a cup of tea and giving him the herbology book was something that Professor Lupin would have done.
Yeah.
Like, she is just setting us up to love Moody. Like, all the Lupin comparisons, like...
Well, he's just been so cool, and we've only... This is, like, the 3rd time we've seen him, and he's just been cool every single time.
No.
It'll be interesting to see where Mad Eye Moody goes from here.
Love.
And with that, we shall end the non-spoiler and talk about spoilers. So, we will be right back.
Till the stand!
All right, so we're back with the spoiler section, and we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot to dig into here. I did want to mention really quick and ask you, there's a moment where Crouch says that Moody, Crouch says that there's a lot he has to teach in 1 year. And Ron pipes in with, "You're not staying?" Do you think Crouch slipped up there, or do you think he just doesn't care one way or the other?
I think that I just always assumed it was an actual real detail that he gleaned from Mad Eye Moody when he, like, took over, like, locked him up and stuff and got him, because...
Oh, you think it was a Crouch detail that
is
Moody...
accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't think it was just
Because
like
I don't really see Moody having wanted to stay more than 1 year. I do think, like, the favor to Dumbledore. I think maybe he even found it out from Dumbledore, like, maybe when he arrived to the school. I'm assuming him and Dumbledore
Thanks
had
for
a
doing
nice
this
little
favor for me.
meeting. Yeah.
That's possible. I just didn't know if it was like, ooh, this is an example of Crouch
It'd be
maybe
kind
just
of a
like...
random slip-up, because I don't think... I mean, do we think Crouch cares about teaching the kids? Like, does he have a great desire to teach them a lot in only 1 year?
Well, that kind of brings us to one of the other things we want to talk about, which is you mentioned how Moody's a great teacher. And I'm like, well, would real Alistair Moody be a good teacher, or is Barty Crouch Jr., the Ravenclaw that he was, actually have a little bit of a thing for teaching?
So I do think real Moody would have been a good teacher, because we know that he taught Tonks when he was her trainer mentor
yeah.
when she became an Auror. So I think there's something about him. Do I think he would have been as good of a teacher as Barty Crouch Jr. is being? Probably not.
See,
I don't know.
no, that was the thing. I think you hit it on the head with the mentoring Tonks thing. But I don't know if that's a great example of Moody's teaching ability. We know Tonks is... I'm not saying Tonks isn't talented or skilled as an Auror. Obviously she is. But because she's so talented and smart, I don't know how much Moody is like... I think Moody's just literally more as a mentor of an Auror. I don't know that he's teaching her anything other than constant vigilance. Other than that, I don't know that he's imparting a whole lot of particular, like, wisdom on her, per se.
Well, I think he has a lot of wisdom to share.
Sure, yeah.
For defense against the dark arts. Like, I don't think he could have gone in and taught any other subject.
I'm seeing it as more of like an
this one.
experience thing. Like, here's what I've seen, here's what I've done, here's what I've done in this situation.
Well, he has to know the magic that you need in those situations.
I guess I'm giving Tonks the benefit of the doubt that she knows a lot of that magic.
Oh, I'm more thinking about the students now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, like, yes, like, Tonks didn't need as much from him as, like, obviously the students would need.
Right, exactly.
So, like, he would tell her, like, yeah, you get into this situation, like, from my experience, this is what
Sure.
you need to do for Tonks. But, like, for the students, I think he would have some, like, real magic life experience to share with them fighting the dark arts.
Okay.
I just don't think he would have been as good at imparting it, maybe, as Ravenclaw Barty Crouch Jr. is. But, like, I also...
Do you think it's a patience thing? Do you think Barty Crouch Jr. has a little bit more patience?
Obviously, he has the patience, like, all the patience in the world.
Yeah. that's fair. He's really good at playing a long game.
And
yeah.
the real Mad-Eye Moody, I don't think has any patience whatsoever. So, yeah, that is probably a good point on your part.
Okay.
But my question is, how much of this teaching that Crouch is doing do you think is genuine? Or is it all, like, the total, like, I just, like, am probably totally overthinking every single thing he does.
It's fun, though, isn't it?
Yes, it's so fun. But literally, I'm like, when he enlarged the spider, I'm like, are you only enlarging the spider so you can further torture Neville? Or, like, do you feel any guilt whatsoever towards Neville? Or are you getting a real kick out of how much you are clearly bothering Neville? Did you invite Neville back to your classroom for a cup of tea so you can get even more of a high off of the torture? Or do you feel any guilt?
There's a lot of places to go with this. So let me backtrack it just a second. There's a lot of trauma in that room that Moody's teaching. So you have, obviously, Harry with the killing curse.
Yes.
You have Neville with the Cruciatus curse, because his parents, the Alice and Frank, were tortured. And then you have Ron, to, I guess, a lesser extent, but still very real with the whole spider aspect of it.
Very real.
Very real, just not as mortal danger-esque than
not
the other
as, like, I was raised without parents.
Right, yeah. So, a lot of trauma. And I kind of broached the question earlier of, like, do you think this was always the plan for Moody? Or do you think he specifically looked at his roster and goes, I have Neville Longbottom and Harry Potter in the same freaking class.
I mean, this is like my point. Like, I don't know. Like, I can't tell. Like, he must have had a similar lesson to this for the twins and Lee Jordan, because they were so excited about his class in the last chapter when they were telling Harry and Ron. Like, I can't imagine what would have been more exciting than this. But, like, yeah, I don't know.
To your point then about him kind of taking Neville under his wing, and is it a more sadistic twist on it? Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there too, because there's like, so he was obviously one of the members that cornered and tortured.
So is he just like reliving that through Neville? Or does he feel any guilt? Because obviously his plan didn't work. They weren't able to bring back Voldemort by torturing them.
Right. So here's my, I guess, quick 2 cents on it. Is I don't think he feels guilt. I think he feels zero guilt about torturing Frank and Alice. That being said, I almost feel as though he's disassociated the two things and is like, that was a job that I did for a purpose. I'm not, he's like, from what I gather from this from specifically this chapter is, I think he's separated the two things and is like, Frank and Alice were a job and I did that job and I did it well. I don't know that he's sadistic in a lot of different ways, but I don't think he's as sadistic as, let's say, the Lestranges, who were also involved.
Oh, yeah, agreed.
They were doing it, as a job, but they were doing it for pure joy and entertainment. I don't know that Barty Crouch gets the pure joy and entertainment out of it.
He was doing it for a purpose. They were doing it mostly for the sadistic joy.
So I think he's literally able to take that and separate Neville out. Like, that was a job, that's done. This is Neville Longbottom, their son. Yeah, I know what I did, but I'm not holding any of the past issues there against or for Neville.
See, I kind of sort of disagree. I don't know that he necessarily feels guilt. I agree with you there. But I do think maybe some part of him sympathizes with Neville. Because, so later on, when he's like telling his whole tale, he talks about how he relates to Voldemort and that they both had disappointing fathers.
Sure.
So, like, I think maybe he could see, like, Neville didn't have disappointing parents, but he could maybe, like, recognize, like, all right, he didn't have disappointing parents, but he basically had a disappointing childhood because I know for a fact his parents were not there. Like, he has that knowledge where many other teachers probably don't.
Sure.
So he knew, I don't know. At the end of the day, he probably just didn't care, and he probably just wanted to make sure Neville got that book. But I think what I'm more intrigued by... It's another job, and you can
separate the two.
But what I'm more intrigued by is wondering, is he kind of like upping his showmanship up a little bit to poke at Neville and make it worse for Neville? Like, he already knows it's going to be bad for Neville. Is he finding joy? Does he maybe have slightly more of that sadistic streak like Bellatrix has than we maybe credit him for? And is he finding joy in poking at Neville and showing him the Cruciatus Curse and being like, yeah, this is what I did to your parents?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get that he's taking joy out of it. But I will give you that sadistic part of him has to be there, because there's no way you do that fully knowing Neville Longbottom is sitting in front of you. So it has to be there.
I think that's where the enlargement of the spider comes in. I think maybe that spider doesn't get enlarged if Neville's not sitting there.
Maybe. I fully agree with you that he definitely has... You don't follow Voldemort if you don't have a little... How can I say this in a PG world? If you're not a little... messed up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You have to be a little off to follow a guy doing what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And you have to be attracted to that kind of thought to even follow him in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And follow him as loyally as this man does.
So that's definitely present. I guess I'm giving him the credit of being able to put some stuff to compartmentalize a little bit for the sake of a job or a duty.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know if I'm saying that the right way. You could say the same thing for Harry, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, he fully knows the history.
Is that why he brings up that he's the only one who survives? And then Harry just goes through this whole mental, like, landslide of his parents' death.
Well, there's that psychological shenanigans that he's pulling on Harry. Also, but Barty Crouch Jr. himself has got to be in two different mindsets. One, this is the kid that ruined my whole life.
True.
Because he took down the Dark Lord, and I've spent the last however many years, struggling because of this. Whether it's in Azkaban or Imperius or whatever.
Yeah.
I've been in the gutter because of this kid. But secondly, and I think this is pulling at him, we're getting into the psychology of Barty Crouch Jr., and it's great. But it's probably that dislike or hatred that he probably has for him.
Mm-hmm.
But also pulling with it because, and this is me shining some light on the Ravenclaw part of him, there's probably got to be some curiosity as to how the heck did this kid foil the Dark Lord? And there's probably that in that statement of, like, the only person to survive this is sitting in front of me. And there's probably a thought in his head going, how did you do that?
I mean, Voldemort himself asked that question. So Barty Crouch Jr. has to be asking the question.
Of course. Yeah. And he's probably as curious as he is angry. Yeah. And just like, I want to know the answer. And I want to get to know this kid to see if I could impart any, like, gain any wisdom.
Which, again, the patience and control that he has, like, to be that close to this kid all year. Like, he builds a relationship with Harry, very much so.
Yeah.
And to not just ever lash out at Harry, it's more than a lot of people would be able to do.
And that's because he's got he knows he has a bigger role to play, both Harry and him, and a bigger job to do. There's a job that needs to get done.
I think you put somebody other than Barty Crouch Jr. in that role, it's not as successful. Like, Voldemort doesn't come back at the end of this book in the way that he comes back.
Yeah.
If somebody other than Barty Crouch Jr. is given this job.
Like, you say that, and I'm trying to run through a roster of competent Death Eaters, and I'm like...
Not very many.
Snape would be the only one that could do the job because he
But I don't
does
think
the
Snape
job.
has the control over his feelings towards Harry
to
be
I'll
as
give you that.
successful
That's an added
as Barty
curveball.
Crouch Jr. And,
Sure. I'll give you that added. He's
intelligence-wise,
he's capable.
He's the only one. Yeah.
There's that curveball. I'll give you that. But other competent Death Eaters, I'll get this name out of the way real quick so you don't harp on me too much for it. But Dollhoff, I don't think can do it. I don't think Yaxley would be able to do it.
Definitely not. Yaxley's too much of like a brawny, like...
I mean, he's trusted to do some big jobs down the road, but I don't think this is something he's suited for. Carrows, no.
No, definitely not.
Now I'm starting to run through some...
Crab, Goyle, no.
No.
Wormtail, no.
Well, yeah.
No, Wormtail has the, like, sneakiness. I just don't think he has the nerve...
He doesn't have the nerve...
to impersonate Moody for that long.
I don't think he has the nerve, and I'm not saying Peter Pettigrew is not intelligent, because he is, but I don't think he has Barty Crouch Jr.'s talent for wordplay as much. Like, Barty Crouch Jr. knows what he's saying. He knows the power of his words, and he knows how to, like...
Well, and the subtlety in the ways that he leads Harry through the Triwizard Tournament.
Right.
The whole time.
You also have to be competent enough to, you yourself, be able to get through that tournament.
Yeah.
And there's, to Barty Crouch's credit, there's very few that could really do it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be a competent, talented witch or wizard to navigate your way through the tournament in any circumstance. So that takes a certain level of ability. So again, I'm sorry we're gushing about Barty Crouch Jr. again, but I don't, the point is, I don't see many, if any, like Lucius couldn't do it, like Death Eaters that would be able to pull this off.
I think
the same
Goyle
way.
could do it.
You literally just said he couldn't, like 2 minutes ago. Anyway. Before we get on too long about this, there was something from the non-spoilers that I wanted to bring back and discuss, and that's, we're in the chapter, The Unforgivable Curses.
Yes.
So, we've just talked about some of the trauma that was in the room, these unforgivable curses we've seen play out over the course of the books. And obviously the killing curse gets the most publicity because, Lily and James, among many others. The Imperious curse, I think you mentioned this in the non-spoiler, doesn't get talked about nearly as often. Yet there are examples of it being used, particularly later on in Book 7. It's used pretty heavily because you get Pius Thickneys being the puppet minister of magic, being Imperious. You get lots of people. You get Stan Shunpike is Imperious. They fill out the Death Eater ranks with a lot of Imperious people.
Yep.
And
Harry himself uses it a couple times.
Yes, he does. That's how I was. Yeah. So I remember the first time he used it, and I was like, "Oh, he's actually."
The first person he uses it on is the goblin.
Bogrod, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the goblin and it's Griphook who coerces him to do it. Yeah, and that's how they get into Gringotts. During that whole roller coaster ride of, quite literally, of an experience. But yeah, so Harry
Nothing
himself
will ever shake me as much as when Harry tries to use the Cruciatus Curse, though.
That's in Book 5, right? Is when he first tries to use that in the department, not in the Department of Mysteries, but in the Ministry of Magic.
But I was thinking more because he kind of successfully uses it in Book 7 when they spit on Minnie, and that's what really pushes him to actually successfully use it. I think that's why it sticks out to me because he actually causes pain with it.
Moody does describe a little bit, not so much with the Cruciatus Curse, but with the Killing Curse. He's like, if you all tried to do it right now,
I wouldn't even get as much as a nosebleed. Because
the trick with this is you have to mean it.
And Bellatrix tells him that when he tries to use it in Book 5.
Which is great. And I love that part of oh, no, I guess that's not in the movie. I love that part in the book with Bellatrix doing it. In the movie, it's Voldy himself going, because he's trying to use the Cruciatus Curse on Bellatrix in the movie.
And Voldy says that to him?
And, yeah, Voldemort's making his entrance. And he just comes in, his vapor-esque self. Comes in over Harry's, shoulder and is like, you've got to mean it. Do it. You've got to mean it. Which was an interesting kind of play as well.
I like it better with Bellatrix saying it.
Yeah, I mean it fits. So it's interesting when Harry tries to use it. It's always like a jolt awake of oh man, He
never tries to use Avada Kedavra, right?
I don't think so. I can't recall him ever once. I can recall him Expelliarmusing a bunch in mortal peril, but
number 1.
Snape taught him. But yeah, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Cruciatus Curse a little bit more here, because Neville is focused so much in this chapter, and he's obviously very shaken after the lesson, and it is because Frank and Alice were tortured to the point of insanity with it, which none of our characters know at this point.
Nope.
Until Book 5 at St. Mungo's, when they run into...
Everybody knows at that point, but you were right. Harry finds out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine... we haven't really talked about Neville, I guess, in this sense, but Neville has it hard in a lot of ways.
I think in some ways he has it harder than Harry. To see your parents, but to not have your parents know you, and you not to know your real parents. And
everybody tell you what your parents were and are.
Grandmother force you to use your father's wand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it, because his parents were and are heroes. They fought valiantly. They were gifted Aurors. They talented witch and wizard. And he's been told that. And he doesn't know that. He can't see that from what they currently are, which is heartbreaking. And you just get told story upon story. And it's similar to Harry in that you get told story upon story about how great your parents were. It's different because all Harry has is that imagination of how great his his parents were. When Neville can literally go and see them and not see that they're those people anymore. And that's got to be hard. It's got to be hard for his grandmother, too, for that matter. Like...
Of course. She was
Frank's mother, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's... She plays it... She built up a different shield. She built up the shield of, like, my son was a hero.
Old school shield.
Nobody
sees your grief. Nobody... You be strong. You... Neville, suck it up.
There's no reason to be sad because they were... Heroes. You know, and she puts a lot of that onto Neville. Like, why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? Yeah. Neville's got it tough. And he goes to school.
He was literally dropped out of a window because he hadn't shown signs of magic yet.
And no one understands, which I think is the hardest and most sad part about it, is they make fun of Neville, they tease Neville, but they don't know, and this goes to, like, you never know what someone's struggle is, you don't know what someone is going through, you don't know what cards the other person has been dealt. So try to be kind. Try to be kind, people.
Seriously.
But
kindness is an option, take it. Every time.
Neville doesn't volunteer any of this information either.
Probably thought Hogwarts would be the place he could come to. Nobody would know. He could finally maybe find himself, be himself. And then he just finds a whole bunch of cruel people.
It's a hard situation because, you know, you find out later Neville is very proud of his parents and very proud of what they stood for and what they've done. He also might be, you know, he's a kid. He's got conflicting emotions. He might be a little bit embarrassed that he doesn't have parents that can send him off to platform 9 3/4, or he does, you know, or they're not really functioning members of society. Might be a little embarrassed by that. Might be, you know, I don't know.
Remember in book 5 when the trio does meet Alice, because Alice shuffles out after him to give him the gum wrapper. And I remember there's a line of something like Neville looks at them defiantly, just daring them to make fun of him. It's like he expects people to make fun of her appearance,
exactly,
her manner, and it's like, we know Harry, Ron, and Hermione would not do that, but there are people at Hogwarts who would absolutely do that.
Yes. I was about to use Draco as an example, but let's be yes, Draco would.
Yes.
I mean,
other Gryffindors would.
I was just about to say, he's not the only one, and he's not the only one that would, you know, be in his own house. Like, there'd be people in his own house that would probably do that. So, it's a tough position for Neville to be in, and I almost want, like, that epilogue of, like, Harry, like, for example, in, I had that Quidditch World Cup, which almost acted as an extended epilogue. Like the Quidditch World Cup add-on that I spoke about a couple of chapters ago, when you get like Harry Potter and Ginny and whatever are at the Quidditch World Cup.
Didn't they try and say they have marital problems?
Is a Reed Skeeter article, yeah.
I know, but
yes.
The whole thing just made me angry.
Yes, but I want that adult Harry, Hermione, Ron discussion with Neville of just like, or that, it doesn't even have to be an adult. It could be just after book 7 of just being like I want that moment for Neville of just having like, you've lived up to your parents' memory,
Well, I think, you know, cutting off Nagini's head, wearing the sorting hat as it catches on fire. I would like to think maybe Neville realizes that without a conversation even being had.
But that.
But it would be nice for them to acknowledge, like.
Yeah, because they didn't have those conversations
as kids,
like through the DA or anything like that. When you could have those conversations, if Harry knew or Hermione knew, I think they'd have the tact in those moments to be like, "No, Neville, what your parents did was."
I'm sorry, you're trying to say Ron wouldn't have the tact?
You almost can't say that with a straight face. He would try, and then Hermione would have to correct him. Yeah, Hermione would have to course correct real quick. Or then Hermione would then yell at Ron, and then Harry would have the moment.
I was just going to say, yeah. Basically, Harry and Neville should have that moment by themselves.
Sure. But no, I kind of want that moment of just Harry and Neville to just be there being like...
I think it was had.
I'm sure it was. But like, our parents were heroes in the first Wizarding and now, you know, we've made that impact in our own way here. I think it would be a cool scene. But Neville's... Neville's been through a lot at a very young age.
Again, I just want to smother him in hugs.
He needs
if that's what he wants.
He needs a hug. But do you have anything? We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. I don't know that we can possibly have a conversation as meaningful as this one.
Hey, ending on Neville's never a bad thing. Neville, we have had some Neville conversations already on this podcast. We will continue to have a bunch more.
Absolutely.
So, big Neville fans here at Hogwarts a Podcast. And, let us know what... We've talked about a lot of things. Let us know your thoughts on Barty Crouch, the teacher, on his lessons here. What do you think of him kind of going over Unforgivable Curses? Let us know what you think Lupin and Moody would teach upper and lower level students at Hogwarts. We've covered a lot of ground. We love hearing from you guys on Twitter, on Instagram, so let us know those thoughts. And we'll be back with kind of a cool chapter, chapter 15.
Bobaton and Durmstrang.
Or Beauxbatons and Durmstrang. We'll be right back with those next week. Please join us. I'm sure it'll be entertaining. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a Podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.